What is going on, guys? Money Webby here, back again, week 6 with my favorite waiver wire pickups. Not a crazy jam-packed waiver wire, just some kind of guys that can help you out. Some stash guys going forward that could have some good upside, especially at the running back position. They could overtake the job. So before we get going, be sure to drop a like if you guys are enjoying these videos and if you want to continue them for the rest of the NFL season. Hope you guys are doing well in your season-long leagues, and you can follow me on Twitter for any questions you might have for kind of constructing your lineup or like your bench for the pickups, or you can comment down below on the video for any specific questions and stuff like that. And be sure to subscribe to the channel if you are new here to continue to get these waiver wire pickups, DFS picks every single week. So let's get into it. Running backs first up. I mentioned Nyheim Hines last week. But if he's still available, the same thing goes. I think this guy is going to be great going forward. He has been already in PPR formats. He's getting a ton of catches. He's had 21 catches in the last 3 games. So they're using him in that kind of Darren Sproles kind of role in this Colts offense. They're throwing the ball a ton. Probably going to be continuing to do that going forward because they can't really run the ball at all. So we should see around 5 to 6 catches maybe every single week for Hines, especially if they get down in games. Their defense isn't great. It's okay. So I think this Nyheim Hines kid is going to continue to be a good factor in PPR. Carry some running back 3 upside and flex appeal going forward. I have him in my leagues, and he's doing some great things. So definitely go ahead and pick him up if he's available. He'd be my top pickup. If you just want some production right away, especially in PPR, maybe not so much in standard leagues, but in full point PPR, the guy is a great target. So go and get him. And then Alfred Morris. This is kind of contingent on if Matt Breida plays this week. I would imagine he doesn't. His injury looked pretty bad. I guess the MRI came back clean, but I think he's probably on the wrong side of questionable this week. Obviously, if he does play, then Alfred Morris wouldn't get that much of a tick. An uptick at work, but he looked pretty good when Matt Breida went out. Had some good holes. San Fran's blocking has been pretty solid this year, but he doesn't have that much upside because in the CJ Beathard offense, obviously it's not going to be that productive for fantasy points. So he could just be like a low-end running back 3 without Matt Breida. So definitely kind of maybe a short-term fill, especially if you have Breida or if you have any other injuries like Fournette. If you weren't able to get TJ Yeldon, Alfred Morris is a guy that you can look towards. But the rest of the year, if Breida's back in this week or next week, Alfred Morris probably droppable in that case. So then next up, a stash guy here, D'Onta Foreman. He's 20% owned in Yahoo leagues right now. This guy has some good upside. He has the ability to take over this backfield and be the leading ball carrier. I mean, Lamar Miller has been really bad, and Alfred Morris has not looked great running the ball either. He's been pretty good in the passing game, but Foreman, I think he's the best running back of these 3. So when he comes back in week 7, he's probably going to be back in week 7. I think he can take over this lead job. And Lamar Miller, he was active on Sunday Night Football, but he didn't play at all. So that's not a good vote of confidence in Lamar Miller going forward. So that means D'Onta Foreman has definitely the opportunity of taking over this backfield. So he's a good stash guy with some upside in the good offense that runs a lot of plays, and their defense isn't very good, so they definitely can get in some more shootouts going forward. So that's a good stash guy if you have the available space on your bench, or if you happen to be like a Lamar Miller owner, I would definitely go and get D'Onta Foreman. Then Mike Davis. I honestly didn't see Mike Davis having any appeal this year. I mean, they drafted Penny in the first round, but the guy got no snaps last week, and it seems like Mike Davis has taken over as a second running back, and he's been very active even as the running back 2 last week. He had 14 touches, and the Seahawks, it seemed really committed to running the ball. I mean, Carson had 20 carries, Davis had 12. So I think they're going to try to keep it on the ground as much as possible, as long as they're within reach of the game and have that ability to run the ball. And even when they get in the passing situations, it seems like Mike Davis has been on the field a little bit. So I think this guy could have some low-end running back 3 appeal as long as he's staying on the field and getting those snaps and touches behind Chris Carson. I mean, like, he's actually been more productive than Carson. I think, like, yards per touch. So that's definitely a guy that's more of a short-term option, I would imagine. I would imagine that Penny would work himself back into the fold before the season ends. So definitely a little short-term help there with Mike Davis, and he's probably available on your waiver wire. Then Ronald Jones, another stash guy that could easily take over as the lead back, and Tampa Bay this week. And they have a very good matchup going against Atlanta running backs. Absolutely killing Atlanta every single week. We had Connor last week. Gio Bernard went off against them. McCaffrey went off against them. Alvin Kamara went off against them. So does every running back is going off. So Ronald Jones definitely has the opportunity, especially this week, they really take over the lead back role in this offense. And Peyton Barber, he's been very ineffective when he's been kind of the starting back. So I think Ronald Jones will be the starting back if I had to guess. And even if he's not, if he's like getting those second kind of touches to Barber, I would imagine he would be more effective and just kind of working himself into like more snaps in that game against Atlanta. So that's another kind of stash guy alongside Deontay Foreman. So if you want some short term, I mean not really short term, but some guys that can give you production right away, Nyheim Hines would be my number one guy, who's probably not available, but he could be available in your leagues. And then Alfred Morris would be short term, then with Mike Davis, but Foreman, Ronald Jones, and Hines probably the most upside and going forward through like the long-term kind of thing. So those are my running backs. And now for wide receivers. The first guy I'm looking at is going to be Mohamed Sanu. He's actually been pretty productive as a third wide receiver in this offense. Calvin Ridley, he's not really like a huge catch guy. He's been more of a kind of guy they've been using in the red zone with Julio Jones not able to get any touchdowns ever. But Mohamed Sanu, very consistent the last 3 weeks. So 7, 9, and 7 targets. So that's definitely a good sign trending forward. And these games with the Falcons, it looks like they're going to be shootouts every time out because they probably have one of the worst defenses in all the NFL now with all their injuries on the defensive side of things. So I think Sanu will continue to be a nice check down guy over the middle of the field. He definitely has some ability to score touchdowns with Julio Jones allergic to the end zone. So that's a good one. He'd actually be my favorite guy to go ahead and pick up because I feel like he's the safest out of these guys alongside Allison to give you that kind of that wide receiver 3 production. So going on Allison now, he should be back this week. He was close to playing with that concussion. We know that Valdez-Scantling had a really good week for fantasy purposes, but it's not like he was doing much in the first half. Like when they got in kind of that come from behind mode, that's when Scantling was getting most of the work. So I'd imagine Rodgers would prefer to go back to Allison, a guy he has more trust with and just kind of chemistry with. So I would expect Allison to slot back into that second wide receiver out wide role and continue to be productive. He was doing some good things when he was in the lineup. And with the concussion probably gone this week, he'll be in that wide receiver 3 discussion again. So that'd be my second guy. Him and Sanu are kind of like tied for me, both kind of high-octane offenses that can definitely be throwing the ball a lot. Sanu a little bit safer because he doesn't have anyone that could take over his job like Scantling. So that'd be my first 2 ones I would go ahead and pick up, though, if they're on the waiver wire. And then Antonio Callaway. He's kind of been letting me down. He's been having some drops, which haven't helped. Like, his talent is crazy, like I mentioned. He has some great route running. But if he can't catch the ball, then obviously it's tough to develop that chemistry with Baker Mayfield. But he's still going to be getting a lot of snaps. And it does help that Higgins got an MCL injury. He's week to week. So Callaway, he's just going to be, like, forced into this role. He's going to get it done eventually, I think. I think it will improve as the weeks go by. Like I said, the route running seems there. Just needs to work on the hands a little bit. But still has it upside, probably more of a stash play this week, but he's still 27% owned. So if you like have a wide receiver 3 that's safe, but a guy that could give you some more production as the year goes on is Antonio Callaway. As long as they don't go ahead and sign someone like Rashard Matthews or Des Bryant, I think Callaway could be that guy to just like I don't know. He's been letting me down recently, I guess. It's up to you if you really want to trust him going forward. More of a stash guy. I wouldn't trust him just yet. But next up, Kiki Kute, however you say his last name. He looked really good on Sunday Night Football. They designed some plays for him, so like quick hitters, They gave him a handoff, and he looked pretty damn good. Like, he was making some great catches, some like high point catches, which he was just like going all out to get, and he didn't have any really problem with those grabs. He had 7 targets, even with Will Fuller playing. So I think this guy, honestly, could have some low-end wide receiver 3 value going forward. He seems pretty good for PPR in this Texans offense, which should lean on the passing game a little bit more still, with no run game to be had yet. And he looked really good. Like I said, Will Fuller probably be relegated more to like that deep threat role with Kute there, who can handle some more of that short to intermediate work. So he seems good for PPR. I would actually go him over Callaway, but Callaway would be my 4th guy. So that's another good option there. And then Josh Reynolds. This is more of a short-term option, obviously, because Brandon Cooks and Cooper Kupp will be back eventually, but both of them are in concussion protocol. So I would imagine one of them don't play. Cooks, the hit that he took looked brutal. So I would imagine that Cooks is on the wrong side of questionable, and Reynolds will slot into that role, which is just a great role in this Rams offense, very fantasy friendly, and he looked pretty good when he had the limited snaps last week after coming in for Brandon Cooks. So I think he could be a wide receiver 3 with one of them out going forward, and if both of them are out this week, it probably could be a low-end wide receiver 2. So definitely, if you're hurting a wide receiver, a good short-term option is Josh Reynolds. And then you got some safer guys like Sanu, Allison, and then Kute, pretty safe. I think he can be solid going forward. And then Callaway, more of a long-term upside guy if he can put it together. So those are my wide receivers. And now for tight ends, it's just a wasteland at tight end, like I say every single week. But I think Cameron Brate's going to have some good ability in the next few weeks without O.J. Howard. He's 31% owned, so if you're struggling at tight end, I would go and get Cameron Brate. And if O.J. Howard is available as well, you can kind of stash him, and when he comes back, then Howard will probably be the preferred fantasy option at that point. So you could combine those guys to give you a short-term answer with Brate and then a long-term answer with O.J. Howard if he's available on your waiver wire. But still, if he's not, Cameron Brate would be my favorite pickup for this week. And then Niles Paul. He's 0% owned, so I'm guessing he's available on your waiver wire. He had a pretty damn good week. He had 9 targets, 7 for 65 for the Jaguars. And Austin Seferian-Jenkins, it sounds like he's going to be out probably the rest of the fantasy season. He's on IR. He could return, but I would imagine he'd be out for the rest of the fantasy season. So good. I don't know. He has good upside, I guess, on this offense. The Jaguars' passing game is very confusing week to week, but I think Niles Paul is honestly a solid player. He looked pretty good in the Redskins when he was the second tight end there. It seemed like every time he got an opportunity, he looked pretty good. So this is kind of a speculative add, I guess, with the ability to continue to have some value going forward. Especially without Leonard Fournette, they're going to be more pass-heavy. Even though Blake Bortles looked terrible last week, he can be good some weeks. So those are the 3 tight ends. Brate is really the only one I'm intrigued by. But Niles Paul does have some upside with Seferian-Jenkins out. Then O.J. Howard, a stash going forward if you want to bite the bullet on him on your bench. I personally wouldn't do so, but if you want to do so yourself, if you have like a deeper bench, and if you just have a spot open that you really don't like anyone, O.J. Howard is the answer at tight end. So that is it for the pickups. You got your tight ends, running backs, wide receivers. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Slap a like on it if you did. You can comment any questions down below like I mentioned on the video. And follow me on Twitter at MoneyWebby for any other questions as well. I can probably answer you quicker on Twitter. And yeah, that's it. So good luck on the waiver wire. Subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you back here again next time.